So now let's talk about how password-based authentication can be implemented. So we know the evidence that's going to be provided is a password a user is going to supply, that they're going to type or touch the screen or something like that. And that's going to follow the telling the system who they are, which typically they provide the user ID. So they type their user ID and password, let's say. And the system now has this task of, well, how do I know this is the correct password for this user? And if it is the correct password, authentication will be successful. So how can we perform this check? So you would say, well, an obvious solution to this problem is that we ask users to share their passwords with the system. So the first time, this is called registration or enrollment or some out-of-band method by which, of course, the system has to know something about your secret. If it doesn't, it can't check it. So let's say the secret is password. So we have a set of users with passwords, and the system stores those passwords. It's a trusted system. We, let's say, give it our password. And if we do that, it's not a good idea, and actually we won't have to do that. But if we do that, then how can we do the check that we're talking about? I will see it's pretty straightforward. All we have to do is compare the typed password with the one that's stored. So where do we store it? We have to store it in a file. People come back, you turn the computer off, and then come back and log in. So this information has to persist. Your computer, multiple sessions. So persistent information is stored in files. One thing we should be smart enough to do is that only the trusted root or admin be able to read this file. The login program is going to run on behalf of them, and they are the ones who are going to check when somebody's trying to authenticate themselves. So this file should be made readable only by the admin or the root, the most privileged user we have in the system. But what if we make a mistake? What if permissions are set incorrectly? If permissions are set incorrectly, somebody else may be able to read that file. And if they're able to read that file, they're able to learn everyone's password, which is not a good thing. Even if the permissions are set right, why should an admin be able to know all the passwords? Okay, every user's password, if they know, there's no reason for them to have access to passwords of all users in the system. And the one reason we don't want to have that is that in case you have a security breach, the passwords are going to be exposed. Everyone's password is going to be exposed to the attacker. Okay, so it's clear that something about the secret has to be shared with the system. The password has to be shared with the system. But storing those secrets in a file, even if you do access control, is not a good idea. So can we do better? So indeed, we can actually do better. And the way to think about that is that we don't store the password themselves, but store something that is derived from it. It's not the actual password, but something that is possible to get hold of only if you had access to the password at some point, or at least in the beginning or the enrollment time or when the password was changed. And then you're not storing the full password, but just something derived from it. The question is, if you're storing something derived from it, what is it and how do you use it? The result that we derive from password, one way to do that is to use what is called a one-way function. These functions are called hash functions. Hash functions are widely used to take an arbitrary length input and produce a fixed size output. Okay, that is fairly unique to the input. Okay, and one way basically says that it's easy to compute given the input. The hash value is easy to compute, but it's very hard to compute the input if you just had the hash value. So such functions exist. We're going to talk about some examples of those. So thing to remember here is that given a password, it produces a hash value of that password. And going from password to hash value is straightforward. Going in the other direction, which is from hash value to the password, is really, really hard. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a function like that. So rather than storing the password, we're going to store something derived from it. In particular, we're going to store a hash value, and that's what we're going to have. And even the hash values that we have, those have to be stored in a file, as earlier we were talking about storing the passwords in a file. Even this file should be readable only for the privileged user or the admin user that we're talking about, on whose behalf the login program is going to run